2019 is officially the year of the wireless earbuds. It seems like every company is waking up to the fact that people want tiny wireless headphones. We didn't get a chance to get to them all, but we did do 4 teardowns on these notoriously unrepairable devices, and here's what we found. Ironically, our first teardown, the Samsung Galaxy Buds, turned out to be the best one. To our surprise, with a little pressure and a bit of careful prying, the little buds popped right open. Inside, we found that the button cell batteries were surprisingly easy to access and not soldered in place. The Galaxy Buds' simple construction warmed our hearts, and spoiler alert, they were the best we would see all year. They scored a very respectable 6 out of 10 on our repairability scale. Later in March, Apple released the second iteration of their AirPods, the AirPods 2. We first tackled the case to see if it would be any easier to get into than the previous model, but boy were we wrong. We had to use a vise and a razor blade to get the case open thanks to the incredibly strong glue holding it together. Unfortunately, after that mess, the case won't go back together very well at all. The buds themselves weren't any easier than the first gen buds, as we again had to use our X-Acto knife to cut them open to get a look inside. The buds were home to drivers, delicate flex cables, and some precious silicone. Worst of all, you still have to cut along the stem to get the battery out, which despite our years of experience is terrifying every time. The second gen AirPods were a disappointing follow-up to the Galaxy Buds, scoring a 0 out of 10. Powerbeats Pro came around in June, and boy were we hoping for anything better than the AirPods. Right away we had to use heat and a razor to get inside, so we weren't feeling too hopeful. Luckily, the cover of the buds came off non-destructively, but the brains were glued in pretty tight. After cutting through some adhesive, we were able to pry up the little board and battery out of the case, but as we were about to remove it, we realized that the small board was connected to another smaller board lodged in the driver cavity. So we were caught with our hand in the cookie jar. We either had to cut the cable or slice a bunch of plastic to finish the disassembly. Things went sour real fast after that, with the case putting up one of the biggest fights in teardown history. Despite the negative points, we couldn't help but acknowledge that you could replace the batteries in these if you were very determined and had a steady hand. So we awarded them a 1 out of 10. The new AirPods Pro debuted at the end of October with a brand new design, noise cancelling tech, and even a force sensitive squeeze button. They sure looked and sounded better, but we were skeptical about whether or not they would be easier to disassemble. The case was our first victim, and since the vise seems to be the key to get into these things, we thought we would give it another try. And it worked! After a considerable amount of prying, the case came apart, and just a few glued down cables stood between us and the batteries on the small logic board. With the case in pieces, we returned to the vise with an unlucky pod. Pressure and some persuasion with opening picks helped separate the two halves of the pod a little. Right away, we noticed the battery, no longer hidden in the stem of the buds, but available right away. Unfortunately, soldered in place though. The two halves of the Pro Pod are connected by a friendly cable with a ZIF connector, which means you can separate them non-destructively, but they won't snap back together nicely like the Galaxy Buds. The AirPods Pro might look and sound better than the previous AirPods. They even have some slight repairability improvements. But at the end of the day, it was still impossible to reassemble them, which means their score remains 0 out of 10. Before we go, a few honorable mentions. Though we haven't had time for a full teardown of Sony's noise-canceling wireless buds, they can allegedly be disassembled non-destructively and use the same easily swappable Varda button cell batteries as the Galaxy Buds. Amazon's new Echo Buds, on the other hand, are constructed similarly to the Galaxy Buds, but are significantly more difficult to work with despite their larger footprint. All in all, we're excited to see this new technology develop, but we hope that more companies can follow in Samsung's footsteps in 2020 and think about the repairability of their next-gen buds.